From presidential motorcades under siege in Buenos Aires to alleged covert operations in Greenland, today's episode we connect the dots between domestic volatility and global strategic ambitions. Argentina's Javier Milei, a self-proclaimed political outsider, faces his first major credibility crisis, one that involves his closest confidant, his sister. Meanwhile, a chilling new report from Denmark suggests that Trump-era influence games may be continuing in one of the world's most geopolitically sensitive regions, Greenland. Now, what's the cost of power when loyalty turns into liability, or when national interests tip into territorial obsession? I'm Henny Seif, and let's get in focus. Welcome back. The hailed as a libertarian reformer now finds himself at the center of the very corruption storm he swore to destroy. Protesters hurled rocks and bottles at his convoy in Lomas de Zamora as the country reels from leaked audio implicating his sister, Karina Milei, in kickback schemes tied to disability medicine contracts. This comes at a time when Milei is fighting to retain political momentum ahead of critical midterms, where nearly 40% of the electorate will vote in Buenos Aires province alone. The scandal has not only damaged his anti-establishment brand, but also reactivated fierce opposition, with rivals like Axel Kicillof branding him a fraudster, with Karina dubbed El Jefe by insiders and pulling the strings of the presidency. Argentina is now asking, who really governs from the Casa Rosada? And let's find out and bring in Mr. Tobias Belgrano, the international political consultant from Buenos Aires. Welcome, Mr. Belgrano, to In Focus. How serious is the blowback from this corruption scandal involving Karina Milei, and how might it affect Milei's image as a political outsider?
Hello, thanks for having me once again. So this is the second blowback President Milei has. In February this year, Milei was involved in a crypto scandal, internationally speaking, where the funds of a lot of investors disappeared around a fake cryptocurrency. So internationally, it was his first blowback because internally didn't have enough impact as the internal population in Argentina were not able to understand the technicalities of the crypto scandals. However, right now, the problem is completely understandable by everyone, and this is causing a lot of distress and anger between the electorate, which has behaved aggressively in President Milei rally yesterday, and had thrown rocks at him, calling him corrupt and calling him a thief. His sister was leaked in a leaked audio by his personal lawyer. This is what makes it so trustworthy, is that his personal lawyer leaked an audio talking about corruption schemes between the disabled agency in Buenos Aires, and talking about schemes stealing about 3% of the medicines budget for each medication for the disability agency. So this scandal comes from the high stakes of power close to Javier Milei, and Javier Milei has a very strong and dependency on his sister psychologically. So he doesn't want to renounce on his sister, which is by the way the General Secretary of the Presidents, which is very close to Javier Milei. So he doesn't want to renounce to her. But the problem is that the people are very angry and her popularity has been decreased. According to polls, 70% of Argentinian population is aware about the scandal, and 70 almost 60% consider it as very dangerous for the country and very danger and a very corrupt scheme.
Well, many in Argentina saw Milei's rise as a reaction to decades of cronyism. Does this scandal shift the narrative that he's different from the old political class?
Well, definitely, definitely. This his display as a political outsider was internationally backlash, at the beginning of the year, but now internally he's strongly criticized by that. But he's showing himself as a political outsider, and he was going to destroy the political establishment. This narrative is falling apart internally in Argentina. So we are, and this is not casual that it's happening right now, because we're having an election in 2 weeks' time, and Peronism is it's becoming really competitive right now in the last few days. According to some image polls, Javier Milei used to be the political figure with the best image internally. Right now, Cristina Kirchner and Axel Kicillof, the former president and vice president from Argentina and the current governor of Buenos Aires province, have increased their positive image, which is challenging for Javier Milei, which is trying to uh, destroy Kirchnerism, as he has been saying repeatedly.
Well, what do we know about Diego Spagnuolo's leaked recordings? Why are they particularly explosive?
Well, they are particularly explosive because Diego Españolo, as I mentioned before, is the lawyer of Javier Milei, the personal lawyer of Javier Milei, and also he was presented by the main candidate of the Libertarian Party in Buenos Aires province, which is now competing against Peronism. So there's a double complication, because it's close to the president and it's close to the current candidate in Buenos Aires province, which has also been attacked in other political rallies in Junín recent days before the Lomas de Zamora scandal. So this corruption scandal has hit hard in the libertarian narrative in all ways. The closeness to the president and the capability of the Argentinian electorate to understand the corruption scheme behind it makes it so destructive, and the closeness to the president. Also, not only the closeness to the president, but also he speaks about some collaborators which are related to Menem's family. Menem's family are the former president Carlos Saúl Menem, also a Peronist liberal president, which was very corrupt also. So there's like internal criticism even in the libertarian lines, saying that the thinking about destroying the political establishment with the Menems within was very hard, because they were genetically corrupt, as a journalist said.
Well, Karina Milei's role in the administration is central. You've mentioned she is the Secretary General of his office now. How has her political influence evolved? She's dubbed El Jefe, and could it become a liability then for the president? How will he be dealing now with his sister?
Well, it's completely a liability right now, as the president doesn't want to take her to take her away from the Secretary General of President. He's capable or intending to fire other politicians among his inner circle, but he's not interested in separating Karina Milei from his side. So if he doesn't, or if he does not fire her, this will be completely a liability to him, because her image is daily decreasing, and her corruption claims have been repeated in the time. She was also related to the Libra scandal in February this year. So her image and her perception as corrupt is being increasing in the electorate. So she's becoming an increasing liability for the president if he doesn't decide to set her away from the Secretary General of the presidency.
Well, the elections are stated for September and October. Do you believe this scandal will significantly influence, it definitely probably will affect the elections. Do you think it will influence the voter turnout, the sentiment ahead of these elections?
Well, the general sentiment in Argentina is that people are not wanting to go to vote. This is a problem in the recent Buenos Aires city elections, and it's probably going to be a problem in the Buenos Aires province elections that we're having now. Even in other provinces of the country, people are not wanting to go to vote, even though the vote is mandatory here in Argentina. People are not going to vote because they are angry, and I think that after this scandal, probably this will affect the libertarian electorate because probably more people who voted for Javier Milei in the ballotage in 2023 probably will not be interested in going to vote. Mainly, I'm speaking about the non-radicalized electorate that probably won't be intending to go to vote. And this is a problem for the government as Peronism has a more mobilization power, especially in Buenos Aires urban area. So it's risky for the government in that this scandal is released right now. And also adding on that, the rumor in Buenos Aires is that there's a lot more of a material around Diego Paniolo. There's also some claims about there's a version of a video of Menem, which is close to Karina Milei, riding a Ferrari in a very rich neighborhood in Buenos Aires. So the scandal is increasing every day as it passes.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking at the opposition, some see Axel Kicillof comment as fraudster, liar, describing Milei, of course, as signaling a more aggressive opposition. Are we heading into a much more hostile campaign season then?
Yeah, probably. Initially, the Peronism intended to show some moderate candidates to make Milei shout all by himself and show themselves as more moderate and more serious politicians rather than Javier Milei's incendiary narrative. So I think now after this corruption scandal, probably he will be perceived as shouting to the air rather than Peronists speaking of in serious terms and in traditional terms as traditional politicians. So the outsider has shown the corrupt scandal. So Peronism tried to show moderation and serious candidates. Even though Kicillof is trying to fight against Javier Milei with a more incendiary narrative, the candidates Peronism chose are more moderate in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Tobias Belgrano, thank you very much for your insight all the way from Buenos Aires at a time when Argentina stands at a political crossroads. From South America to the Arctic, our second story dives into a different kind of political storm, one that pits the world's most powerful democracy against the fragile autonomy of a strategically vital island.
Donald Trump is his name, he's here to stay.
As unlikely, impossible is now reality.
We will make America powerful. We will win, win, win. We will very quickly make America great again.
Foreign policy and Danish broadcaster DR have exposed what looks like a covert U.S. operation aimed at shaping Greenlandic political sentiment in favor of American, specifically Trump-aligned interests. Reports indicate U.S. nationals allegedly compiled lists of Greenlanders based on their stance towards the U.S., attempted to sow divisions with Denmark, and scouted for recruits to support a potential secession movement. Danish officials quickly summoned the top U.S. diplomat in protest. This is not just about espionage. It's about control of a strategic Arctic territory rich in minerals and military positioning. With Greenland playing a growing role in climate geopolitics, NATO operations, and China's Arctic ambitions, the island is becoming a new battleground in the post-Cold War scramble. Trump's repeated assertions that the US must acquire Greenland, whether through diplomacy, pressure, or other means, raises broader questions about sovereignty, democracy, and how far influence campaigns can go under the banner of national interest. And for a more focused perspective, we're joined now by Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, the Executive Director of the Global Foreign Policy Center of Washington. Mr. Russell, welcome to In Focus. What's the significance of these alleged U.S. covert actions in Greenland, and what do they suggest about Trump's long-standing Arctic ambitions?
Well, it's almost comical if it wasn't real. I mean, this is straight out of a movie almost. And the reality is this is starting to get under the skin of the Danes. The Danes have rightful title to Greenland. It is a territory under their sovereign control. And, you know, this is now the second time that Danish Foreign Minister Rasmussen has had to summon the ambassador to his office to say, hey, look, stand down. Is this going to cause a major territorial fight in Greenland? No. Let's be clear. The majority of the 60 to 70,000 people that live on the island want to be part of. They don't want to be part of the United States. They're very happy with Danish sovereignty. So this is getting really, really out of hand, but it's being blown out of proportion by Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you've mentioned, it is getting on their nerves, and this isn't the first time Denmark has summoned a U.S. envoy over Greenland. So are we witnessing a deliberate pressure campaign now in front of the whole world?
The short answer here is yes. I mean, we are. Look, there's reason why there would be strong interest from the United States. As you pointed out in your opening, it's full of rare earth metals that are very key to Donald Trump and his agenda. It is very strategic in the defense of the Arctic. It is very. It's a critical point in dealing with the global environmental issues, and plus it's a great strategic point for NATO and our other partner countries in the Arctic, because it gives us a position in not only the future navigation in the Arctic Ocean, but also from a military strategy standpoint. That being the case, we have to look at the fact that this attention being brought to the island is unwanted and unnecessary, because all it would take really is just Donald Trump, if he is such a great deal maker, just sitting down with the Danes and coming up with, if you want the rare earth metals, there might be a way to do it, but you've got to do it in a way that doesn't look like you're trying to undermine the sovereign government that has territorial control over the island.
Mm-hmm. Well, his deal-making skills probably need a little bit of hand, and that's why the report outlines alleged efforts to recruit pro-Trump Greenlanders. How unusual or dangerous is such influence building in a democratic ally?
It's unknown, because, quite frankly, in my almost 40 years of government, I've never seen an operation that was so ham-handedly, implemented as this one. It's not like 3 former Trump administration officials show up on the island of Greenland and start knocking on doors. That's not going to get attention. It's not. I don't think that this is going to cause the breakup or any sort of bilateral dissolution of the relationship between Denmark and the United States. What it does do is become an annoyance. And what it does do is solidify. For example, you look at the Danes. The Danes look at trading partners. This is a country that has been hit by tariffs by Trump as part of the global tariffs initiative. They're continuing to get pressure on this Greenland situation. If anything is going to solidify the Danes aligning themselves more closely, economic, politically, and strategically with the European partners rather than us, something this stupid would be the reason for them to do that, if that makes sense, Amy.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're ruling out a military option. Trump hasn't ruled out using the military, though, or economic force to secure Greenland. Now, could this escalate into a diplomatic rift with Denmark or even within NATO?
Well, it's become a diplomatic rift. I mean, as much as we're joking about it right now, the fact that the foreign minister had to summon the U.S. ambassador to his office to discuss this issue is a diplomatic rift. Let's set one thing clear, though, here. The idea that Donald Trump is going to use military force against Greenland, which is under sovereign territorial control of Denmark, we would basically have to invoke NATO Article 5 on ourselves, which is never going to happen. That's just not a reality. But what this does do is kind of irritate not just the Danes, but it irritates the rest of Europe. Here's another example of Donald Trump trying to bully his way like a spoiled baby, saying, look, I want Greenland, and if I don't get it, I'm going to find a way to get it, and if I don't, I'm going to throw a temper tantrum, and I'm going to make it miserable for everybody. That's kind of what he's doing here.
Mm-hmm. Do you also see echoes of Cold War tactics, or is this purely the bullish Trump-era brand of geopolitical maneuvering you're talking about?
To the first part of your question, do I see Cold War era tradecraft being executed here? Straight answer, absolutely not. This is an amateur operation. This is comical. And so, no, this does not remind me of really old school tradecraft. What it does remind me, though, is that the lack of just common sense being used by this administration on this, it doesn't make sense from a strategic or diplomatic. We have a presence there militarily. We could build on those building blocks there and work with the Danes and work with our NATO partners to help establish a larger presence to help secure our Arctic situation. That's easy. But the idea that we're trying to undermine a NATO ally, we're trying to undermine the people that actually live there every day to try and push an American agenda on foreign soil is just ludicrous, not only to our partners, but more importantly, it's becoming kind of ludicrous to Americans here. They're like, we're not going to militarily intervene in the sovereignty of Greenland for our own benefit. That just doesn't make sense, and that's not what we signed up for.
Mm-hmm. Then, practically speaking, how should Denmark and Greenland respond diplomatically other than summoning the US ambassador? What tools does the European Union have to counter this type of covert influence?
Quite frankly, I don't think that the Danes or the EU want to escalate this any further. I mean, are there ways they could? Sure. They could put out, the EU could put out a resolution of condemnation against Donald Trump and the American government for, for attempting subversive actions against their sovereignty. That's one thing. They could take this complaint to the ICC and file a civil complaint saying, hey, look, this is just dumb. We'll deal with this judiciously, except the one problem is the U.S. doesn't recognize the ICC. So that being the case, the other issue here is that they could start looking at tariffs. They could ask the Department of Defense to remove its personnel and its resources from the island. There's several ways, but be very clear. Escalate and keep escalating till it gets out of control and it becomes a toxic relationship. I don't think that's going to be happening.
Mr. Russell, now talking about the importance and the advantages that Greenland has to offer the United States beyond the mineral wealth, the military security or the Arctic security implications at play. You spoke about China, you spoke about NATO. So is that what it's really about?
You know, it's part of it. It really is part of it. And here's why. The U.S. Has pretty much had the rest of the world eat our lunch when it comes to the protection of our interests from both an economic and a national security standpoint in the Arctic. Russia is obviously a very dominant factor in the Arctic. China has spent a lot of money and put a lot of resources towards its position in the Arctic, and then plus our Scandinavian partners in Norway, Sweden, Finland, even Denmark have been putting a lot of effort and investing in the future of their position in the Arctic. The U.S. hasn't. You talk about icebreakers. The U.S. currently has 4, now 2 that are Arctic capable to be deployed. The Russians have dozens. The Chinese have dozens. And then even our smaller NATO partners have many. When you look at the navigational possibilities, which is going to be key for commerce and trade, when you look at the national strategic standpoints of getting close into possible waters of adversaries, being the Russians being so close to our Scandinavian partners and even to Alaska and even to Canada. Those become very big problems. And plus, just from the economic value, there's a lot of untouched raw materials in Greenland. Greenland is the population of Greenland is so minuscule as compared to the rest of the untouched scenery of that island. Make no mistake about it, there's a lot of money to be had there. So there's all kinds of factors in here that make it worthy of a fight like this, but it doesn't justify the fight.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you expect the next move for President Trump to be? Do you think he will go on with maybe imposing economic sanctions, more tariffs on Denmark, or do you think he will back down?
That's a very good question, and unless Donald Trump threatens 150% tariffs on Legos, I don't think that there's really much here we can do other than sit down and have an adult conversation and start acting like adults at the table with our Danish partners. But make no mistake about it, this is going to be more of a diplomatic nuisance and great fodder for news coverage rather than creating a very strong political lift. If it does escalate, then we're going to have to retool and rethink this. But I just don't see any sort of reasoning why Donald Trump would want to push this so far as to completely sever any sort of credibility we would have with another European and Nordic partner.
Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, thank you very much for breaking down this web of covert influence and Arctic strategy. Whether it's the streets of Lomas de Zamora or the icy expanse of Greenland, today's episode reminds us that the battle of power, whether through scandal or shadow ops, knows no borders. Presidents promise reform, superpowers promise security, but behind every campaign trail and geopolitical chessboard lies a deeper struggle for control. I'm Hani Asif, and this has been In Focus.